Hey guys, this is Emmy with Wallpaper Boulevard, and we are starting a new series called Design by Day. And it's to bring you one-on-one design info that we think is going to be really useful in um, redoing your space. So, the first topic that we really want to touch on is color because we just feel as though it's so important and it really can enhance the atmosphere of your space and bring dimension to your desired aesthetic. And color just plays a huge role in ranging from your walls to your floors to the fixtures that you use and how they all work together to bring balance to the space. So, how exactly does color affect your space, and how can you prepare a color palette that's going to really enhance the space that you're trying to bring to life? One of the first things that you can really look at is the color theory. There are three components of the color theory, two of which we'll touch on today just because those are the most important in terms of doing it on your own. So there's the color wheel, the color harmony, and color context. Color context is a third that we're not going to touch on so much, only because it's a lot more in-depth knowledge about how color interacts with shapes and space. But the color wheel and color harmony really go hand in hand. So the first thing is the color wheel. So looking at the color wheel, you can really understand and see how colors work together. There's the primary, secondary, and tertiary colors, and understanding which ones really complement each other. So there are the analogous colors, which are the colors that are right next to each other in a color wheel, and then there are also complementary colors, which are across from each other. And being able to create color palettes off of those. One color is definitely going to be more dominant than the others, but the others will really need to accentuate and complement that main color. And you want to understand the reason that the color wheel is so important is because you want to understand how colors are mixed and how they work together to create, secondary colors and tertiary colors and how they will complement each other, like I said, in that color palette, which really leads into color harmony, which is basically just a visually appealing combination of colors, but also that brings a sense of order. So it's important to note that the brain tends to reject extremes. So at either end of the spectrum, there's a chaotic color palette and there's something that's too bland, and both of those will lose its appeal, and the color harmony basically will help you try to find that balance in the middle. So really choosing colors that are going to bring balance, but also kind of a rhythm to your room and a symmetry. So different ways that you can choose colors. So there are going to be features that are in a room that are already incorporated into the wall space. There are doors, windows, there are fireplaces and things of that nature, molding, and a lot of those things that you don't really change. I mean, you can always cover up a window, change the doors, things like that, but a lot of times we tend to not do those things because they're a lot more in depth unless you're remodeling an entire home. So those are important features and fixtures to take into consideration. Windows being a really big part of it because lighting affects color so much and space. So I personally think that windows should definitely have an influence on the colors that you choose. So a north and eastern room will have more light. It's going to be a brighter light because the sun is rising, and a western and southern room are going to have a warmer light because the sun is setting. So a room that is in the north or the east facing those directions will do better with warmer colors because the light will complement that color more so. And in a southern or a western room, cooler colors would go better because that warmer light is going to make a room already not as bright. And so if you use a darker color in those darker rooms, it's going to make a room look smaller. and also just dark, like I said. But if you use the cooler colors in a northern or eastern facing room, it could almost wash out the colors. So there's are two important things to note. Um, and then also thinking about picking, so like I said, you can choose a color palette based on like different features that are already in your room. So if you have a fixture that you really like that's maybe a certain color, you can go based off of that color and incorporate the rest of your room to complement that color and balance it out. You can also use colors to create depth, which is really important. So a say you want to do an accent wall, and a room is on the smaller side, you would want to use a lighter color on that accent wall, because it's going to elongate the room or make it look longer. But say you have a really narrow room and it's kind of feels off balance and it just feels very narrow. So you'd use a darker color or a warmer color at the end of that wall to kind of make it seem more balanced and shorten the room a little bit. It's important to really be specific about which walls, if you're going to do an accent wall, why you're choosing that wall. You want to make sure that it flows and, like I said, creates balance. And some people want to use textures or patterns or different colors. So something that you could even consider for a patterned or textured wall is wallpaper. So we are Wallpaper Boulevard, so it's something that we carry all the time. But it's one of the things is that you want to make sure that you do have, if you're using a texture or a pattern, you want it to make sure that it's done right and that it is symmetrical, because if not, it's going to definitely bring attention to it, negative attention that you don't necessarily want, and it could make your whole room off balance. So an example is perfect example of a texture that we have. So you can kind of see here, there is already textured wallpaper, and it kind of eliminates that step. That next step that you would do, it kind of eliminates the steps in creating the space that you want, and it's easily applied. But it also gives you the option, if you want to change your space later down the road, and you want to change an accent wall without changing all your fixtures, you can find another pattern, a wallpaper pattern that would go great with the space without necessarily having to change your entire decor and all of that. So here's another example of a textured wallpaper. So those are just examples, and it kind of gives you, like I said, the option of skipping those steps, but it also saves you time, because like I said, with a pattern or a texture, you're going to have to really make sure that you set aside the time to do it well. But so how we kind of talked about different features and fixtures of the room. So say you want to pick a color, another way you can build a color palette or a color scheme is based off of one focal point, if you want to do it that way. So an example would be an art piece. If you have an art piece that you love, and say it's like the ocean and it's a blue and it's got various hues of blue in there, you can choose a shade from the painting, and go maybe 2 or 3 shades lighter and paint the wall behind it. So that way the attention is brought to the painting and it's the center piece of that wall. And you can do that as an accent wall or even as a whole room if you want to create a room based off this one painting. So that's a different way of doing it, making a fixture like that or a feature kind of pop, which is a nice way to build your theme around that room. So that brings me back to color harmony, which different ways to create your palette, different formulas, I guess you could say. So you could use analogous colors, which are those 3 that are next to each other, the colors that are next to each other in the color wheel, or you could do complementary colors, or you could even focus on nature. So nature, for example, is going to have colors that already work well together, and that will bring out the different colors in each other and make them pop. So those are different ways that you could go with color and create those different palettes. And you can always do more than one and just go and kind of look at how it would look in your room and see the spacing of it. So those are different options in terms of color. But now let's talk about also black and white and how you can really use black and white in a space, because that's also something that a lot of people really like to do. And black and white is maybe sometimes not necessarily seen for the potential that it could have, because it really can, accentuate a space with the use of different accents. If you wanted to do a black and white room and then use colored accents, it's a good way to be able to change your decor without changing the colors of your walls. But also, it could really help you, achieve a style that's either classic or traditional or contemporary or even traditional. And black and white rooms can also help a room feel both masculine and feminine, which other colors can do as well, but it's a simpler approach to achieving that style. And like I said, you can really change your decor and your settings of your room based on kind of maybe the season or the mood that you're in, which I don't know about you, but I tend to change my mind pretty often. So I like to be able to have the option of always changing the colors of my room, of my decor, as opposed to the color of my room. And so that's always an option. So these are just a few different ways that you can really use color in your space. Like I said, lighting and space are definitely going to play a role in color, just because warmer hues are going to make a space feel smaller, and cooler colors are going to make a space feel a little more open. But the lighting also plays a role, because warmer lighting with warmer colors is going to make the room even darker. And so that's something that you definitely want to avoid, especially if you already have a smaller space. So something like a bathroom, for example, you want that space to be more open and inviting, because bathrooms already tend to be kind of small. And so you don't want your guests to feel overwhelmed with a tight space and then already like an enclosed area with a darker color. Accent walls are another example, that bathrooms are another example of where accent walls are used pretty often, to kind of elongate a room and make the ceilings look taller or the space look bigger, and to really kind of create dimension there, which is really nice. So these are just some examples of a starting point when you're looking to redo a room or a space, or if you're just starting out, because you can definitely pick colors based off of, maybe you bought a couch that you really like, and go based off of that, but it gives you a starting point, so you know that the next step is going to be, okay, what is this color going to look like in my space? If I already have this dark couch, or if I have a really light couch, like how can I use different colors to accentuate the couch? So this is kind of the starting point. It's the way that I always start with color, just because, like I said, it changes so much and it influences so much. But we will definitely be back next week with a new topic. Wallpaper Boulevard is really excited to bring this Design by Day series to you, just because we think it's a fun one-on-one approach, and you guys are always more than welcome to use the chat box and send me a message if you have a question. And there's 3 of us in the office, so if you ever have any questions, we're all hands on deck to answer any design questions that you may have. And we look forward to next week. So have a great weekend, guys.